It was a beautiful day for a wedding. The sun shone brightly as family and friends gathered at the small chapel in the heart of the town. The soft sound of a violin played as Rachel, dressed in a white gown, walked down the aisle with her father. She smiled at her new husband, Samuel, standing at the altar, dressed in a sleek black suit. He looked every bit the part of the young preacher he was, a man of God, a man of purpose. Rachel had always admired him for his faith and kindness. She never imagined that their perfect day would end in such horror. Rachel had met Samuel a year ago. They had worked together at a local hospital, where she was a nurse, and he was a volunteer chaplain. Their relationship moved quickly. Samuel was charming and sweet, and he promised her a life filled with love and devotion. Rachel, believing in the good of people, never saw any red flags. She thought their life together would be full of happiness and peace. That evening, after the reception, the couple drove to a small cottage on the outskirts of town. It was a cozy home, perfect for their new life together. Samuel had arranged everything, a simple honeymoon. It wasn't extravagant, but Rachel didn't mind. She was happy to be with Samuel, the man she loved. They spent the night laughing, talking, and sharing their hopes and dreams. As they lay in bed, Samuel held Rachel close, whispering sweet words of love. Rachel felt the comfort of his arms, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. She couldn't have asked for a better husband. Little did she know that what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life would soon take a dark turn. After some time, Rachel fell asleep, but Samuel stayed awake. He was restless. There was something nagging at him, a strange unease. As the hours passed, he decided to go downstairs to the living room. The house was quiet except for the ticking of a clock on the wall. Samuel sat on the couch, staring at nothing in particular, lost in thought. Around midnight, Samuel noticed something out of the corner of his eye. Rachel's cat, a small gray tabby named Theo, had wandered into the living room. It was unusual for the cat to be awake at this hour. But what caught Samuel's attention was the way the cat was moving. Its fur appeared matted, and it was acting strangely. Samuel's mind began to race. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He stared at Theo for a few moments, then walked over to the animal. When he reached down to pet the cat, his fingers brushed against something wet, something sticky. Samuel froze. As he lifted the cat in his hands, he saw it, something he couldn't explain. There were maggots crawling all over the cat's body. Samuel's heart raced, his breath catching in his throat. The sight of the maggots made him feel sick. What had happened to his new wife's cat? Was this some kind of sign? Something was wrong. Deep down, he felt that he was being tested. Samuel stood frozen, staring at the creature, his mind spinning with confusion and fear. He rushed upstairs. The image of the maggots burned into his mind. He needed answers. The more he thought about it, the more his mind began to twist. He couldn't help but wonder, was there something wrong with Rachel? Was she hiding something? Had the cat been sick before they got married? Why hadn't she told him? He opened the door to their bedroom with trembling hands. Rachel was still fast asleep, oblivious to the storm that was brewing in Samuel's mind. He stood at the door, staring at her. For a moment, he considered waking her up and asking her about the cat. But something held him back. He didn't know if he could trust her anymore. Was this just the beginning of something much worse? The thought gnawed at him until it became unbearable. As the clock ticked on, Samuel paced the room, trying to calm his racing thoughts. Something had to be done. But what? He couldn't ignore what he had seen. The maggots had to mean something, didn't they? By the time the first light of dawn broke through the window, Samuel had made up his mind. Samuel couldn't shake the image of the maggots off his mind. They wriggled and crawled in his thoughts, creeping into his every waking moment. He stared at Rachel, still asleep beside him, her peaceful face completely unaware of the storm brewing in his mind. What was he supposed to do with this? How could he explain what he saw to her? He didn't even know what it meant. Was it just a sick coincidence, or was it something worse? The night passed slowly. Samuel didn't sleep. He kept thinking about that cat. He went over every detail, how it had moved strangely, how its fur had been matted, how he felt the wetness on his fingers. And then those maggots. The thought of them made his stomach churn. He had seen maggots before, but never like this. Never on an animal that was so loved and cared for. As morning light streamed through the curtains, Samuel stood up, quietly stepping out of the bed. He walked to the living room, where Theo was now curled up in a corner, its body still. The cat had retreated to a small space in the room, its eyes half closed. Samuel felt a strange urge to check on it again, almost as if something were pulling him toward it. He knelt beside the cat and, with trembling hands, gently ran his fingers over its fur. This time, there were no maggots, but a sense of unease lingered in his chest. He didn't know what he was hoping to find. Was he searching for answers, or just more signs of something wrong? Either way, he couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister was happening. He stood up quickly and took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. When he returned to the bedroom, Rachel was awake. She sat up in bed, rubbing her eyes, smiling as she saw him standing by the door. "Good morning, my love," she said softly, her voice still thick with sleep. Samuel forced a smile. "Good morning, Rachel," he replied, though his words felt hollow. "How did you sleep?" Rachel stretched and yawned. "Like a baby." "I'm so happy, Samuel. It feels like everything is finally perfect." But Samuel didn't feel the same. The perfect life he had imagined with Rachel had suddenly begun to crack, and it was all because of one strange event. He couldn't understand it. His mind raced as he looked at her, his new wife, sitting there in the soft morning light. She seemed so innocent, so pure. But then why was he feeling this deep sense of dread? Why did the sight of the maggots on her cat send him spiraling? "Samuel?" Rachel's voice broke through his thoughts, and he turned to face her. She was looking at him now, concerned. "Are you okay? You seem different." He couldn't meet her gaze. Instead, he focused on the floor, his hands clenched tightly at his sides. His heart pounded. Could she be hiding something from him? He had to know the truth. But was he ready to ask her about it? What would he do if her answer wasn't what he wanted to hear? Samuel shook his head slightly, trying to push away the anxiety building up in his chest. I'm just tired," he said quietly. "I didn't sleep much last night." Rachel's expression softened. "You should rest. We've been through so much in the last few days, and we'll have plenty of time to settle into our new life together." Samuel nodded but didn't feel comforted. He needed to confront the situation, but he couldn't do it right then. He needed time to think. "Rachel, I need to go for a walk," he said, his voice sounding distant even to him. "Just to clear my head. I'll be back in a little while." Rachel looked a little confused, but she nodded. "All right, but don't be gone too long. I'll make breakfast for when you come back." Samuel left the house without another word. The air outside felt crisp, the world around him still and quiet. As he walked through the woods behind their cottage, his mind raced with questions. What was the meaning of the maggots? What did it say about Rachel? Was she hiding something from him? The more he thought, the more his suspicions grew. Perhaps the cat wasn't the only thing that had secrets. Perhaps Rachel, his sweet, loving wife, had something she was keeping from him. And maybe it was something so horrible that he couldn't even begin to imagine it. He stopped by a small stream, kneeling to drink some water and cool his mind. But his thoughts only deepened into darkness. What if Rachel was involved in something sinister? What if she had been hiding a part of her life from him? How could he ever trust her again? The feeling of dread settled in him like a heavy weight. Samuel felt trapped, unsure of what to do next. He had to confront her, but was he prepared to hear the truth? He stood up slowly, wiping the water from his mouth. As he turned to walk back to the house, his stomach tightened. He had a feeling that the moment he returned, his world would change forever. Samuel couldn't help but feel a strange mixture of anger and fear as he walked back toward the cottage. Each step seemed to pull him deeper into his growing paranoia, each breath heavier than the last. The questions swirling in his mind, about Rachel, about the maggots, about the life they had just begun, gnawed at him relentlessly. When he reached the cottage, the door was open, and he could hear Rachel moving around inside. The comforting smell of bacon and eggs filled the air, but Samuel felt no comfort from it. His mind was too consumed with doubt and suspicion. He needed answers, and he needed them now. Inside, Rachel was standing by the stove, humming softly as she flipped pancakes onto a plate. She looked up when she heard him enter. Her smile was warm and full of the kind of love he had come to expect from her. But to Samuel, that smile now seemed like a mask, something hiding the truth from him. "Samuel, you're back? I've made breakfast. I thought we could start our day together," Rachel said, her voice cheerful and unaware of the storm brewing in his chest. But Samuel could no longer ignore the dread that had settled over him. He stood still at the doorway, staring at her for a long moment, his mind made up. It was time to face the truth, whatever that truth might be. "Rachel," he began, his voice unsteady. "We need to talk." Rachel's smile faltered slightly, but she didn't show any real concern. She had no idea what was coming. "Of course. What's on your mind?" Samuel's heart pounded in his chest as he walked closer to her. He couldn't look at her, not in the same way anymore. She seemed so innocent, but he knew now that appearances could be deceiving. "Last night, I saw something strange." Rachel's face turned curious, her brow furrowing. "What do you mean?" Samuel paused, trying to find the right words. He didn't want to believe what his mind was suggesting, but he couldn't ignore what he had seen. He couldn't ignore the way his instincts screamed at him that something was wrong. "Your cat, Theo? I saw maggots on him." Rachel's face went pale. The color drained from her cheeks, as if her very soul had been stripped from her. For a brief moment, she seemed to freeze, her eyes wide. And then she quickly looked down at the floor. "Samuel, I don't know what you're talking about," she said quietly, her voice trembling slightly. But Samuel wasn't convinced by her denial. He had seen it with his own eyes. He had touched the cat, felt the wetness on its fur. He wasn't imagining things. The maggots were real. And now, Rachel's reaction was only adding fuel to the fire of his growing suspicion. "I'm not crazy, Rachel," Samuel snapped, his voice rising. "I saw them. Maggots crawling on your cat, and I need to know why. What's going on?" Rachel took a step back, clearly startled by his outburst. She looked at him for a moment, her lips trembling. "Samuel, I swear I didn't know." "I didn't," she stopped, as if she were about to say something more, but couldn't bring herself to finish the sentence. Samuel's mind was racing. There was something off about her reaction. Her hesitation, the way she couldn't look him in the eye. It was all too much for him to ignore. The truth was out there, but he wasn't sure how much he was ready to uncover. "Rachel," he said, his voice low and dangerous now. "You're hiding something from me. What aren't you telling me about that cat?" For a long moment, Rachel didn't answer. She stood there, staring at the floor, her hands gripping the edge of the counter. Then, finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's not what you think, Samuel," she said, her words barely audible. "Theo? He's been sick for a while now. I didn't want to tell you. I didn't want you to think badly of me." Samuel took a step closer to her. "Sick? How long has this been going on?" Rachel shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "I didn't know what to do. The vet said there was nothing they could do. I thought maybe if I just kept it hidden, it would go away. I never wanted you to find out." Samuel stared at her, trying to process what she had said. It didn't make sense. Why would she keep this a secret from him? And why did she seem so frightened now? "You should have told me, Rachel," Samuel said, his voice a mix of anger and hurt. "I could have helped. We could have taken care of it together." "I know," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I'm sorry. I didn't want you to think I was hiding things from you. I didn't want to burden you." Samuel's mind was still spinning. He couldn't shake the nagging feeling that there was more to the story than Rachel was letting on. Something didn't add up. But before he could press her further, the front door opened with a creak. Rachel's head snapped toward the sound, her face turning ashen. Samuel followed her gaze, his eyes widening when he saw a figure standing in the doorway. A man, a stranger. He looked familiar to Samuel, though he couldn't place him. He had dark hair and sharp features, and his eyes were filled with something Samuel couldn't quite read. But before Samuel could speak, the man spoke first. "You're not alone, Rachel," the man said, his voice cold and detached. "You never were." The moment the stranger spoke, the air in the room grew cold. Samuel froze, his heart hammering in his chest. The man's words seemed to hang in the air, a heavy weight that he could neither shake nor escape. Rachel's eyes widened in shock, and she took a step back, her hands trembling as if she had been caught doing something terrible. Who are you?" Samuel demanded, his voice sharp and full of confusion. He took a step toward the stranger, but Rachel quickly stepped between them, as if trying to shield him from whatever was about to unfold. The man's eyes remained locked on Rachel, his expression unreadable. "It's time, Rachel," he said softly, his voice strangely calm. "It's time for him to know the truth." Samuel's mind was racing. He had no idea who this man was, but something about him seemed familiar. It was as if he had seen him before, though he couldn't place where. And why was Rachel so terrified? What truth was he talking about? Rachel was shaking now, her face pale and tear-streaked. She looked at Samuel, her eyes filled with regret, then back at the stranger. "I never wanted you to find out like this," she whispered, her voice barely audible. But, but it's too late now. The truth is out." Samuel's confusion deepened. "What truth? Rachel, what's going on?" His voice cracked with frustration. "Why is this man here?" Rachel swallowed hard, her hands trembling as she wiped away a tear. "His name is David," she said, her voice weak. "And he's the one who helped me take care of Theo." Samuel's eyes darted between Rachel and the stranger, his mind trying to piece together what was happening. "Take care of Theo? What does that mean? What have you done?" David stepped forward, his expression softening as he looked at Samuel. "You've been deceived, my friend," he said calmly. "Rachel didn't just bring you here for a simple marriage. She brought you here for a reason. For a much darker reason." Samuel's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" His voice was barely above a whisper. His mind was trying to make sense of the growing chaos. But the pieces weren't fitting together. David's gaze shifted to Rachel. "She's been part of something far more dangerous than you could have imagined. And you, Samuel, you've become part of it, whether you like it or not." Samuel's stomach churned. His thoughts were spiraling. This couldn't be real. He didn't want to believe it. But the cold look in David's eyes and Rachel's broken expression were making it impossible to ignore. Rachel let out a soft sob, then turned to face Samuel fully. "I never wanted this to happen," she said, her voice trembling with guilt. "But I had no choice. I was desperate, Samuel. I couldn't keep running from the life I had." Samuel took a step back, his heart sinking. "What life? What are you talking about?" David spoke again, his voice low and steady. "Rachel's been running from something for a long time. A past she's tried to bury. The cat, Theo, was just a symptom of a much deeper problem." Rachel's face contorted in pain as if she had just been forced to relive something horrible. "I didn't want you to know," she whispered. "I didn't want you to think I was like them." "Like who?" Samuel asked, his voice cracking with desperation. He needed answers, needed to understand what was happening. David's gaze hardened. "Like the people who raised her. People involved in dark practices. The maggots you saw on the cat were not just a sign of disease. They were a warning, a message. Rachel's past is catching up with her, and now you're in the middle of it." Rachel's breath caught in her throat. "I didn't want any of this," she whispered. "I tried to escape, but it's not that easy. I couldn't outrun them." Samuel was reeling. His mind was overwhelmed with 1,000 thoughts. But the only thing he could focus on was the pain and fear in Rachel's eyes. This wasn't the woman he had married. He didn't know who she was anymore. "I don't understand," Samuel said, his voice shaky. "What did they want from you?" Rachel closed her eyes, as if the weight of the past was too much to bear. "They didn't want anything from me," she said quietly. "They wanted everything from me. My loyalty, my soul. I couldn't give it to them. I thought I could escape, but what?" Samuel urged. "What did they do to you, Rachel?" Rachel took a deep breath, then looked at David for a moment before continuing. "They're involved in things I didn't even understand when I was a child. Dark, ancient things. Things that don't belong in this world. And when I tried to leave, they came for me. That's when I met David. He's been helping me ever since." David nodded, his expression grim. "I'm the one who showed Rachel the truth, Samuel. I'm the one who helped her understand the danger she was in. And I'm the one who's been trying to protect her ever since." Samuel's head was spinning. His whole world had just been turned upside down. What was Rachel involved in? What had she done? And what did this man, David, really want? Rachel's voice broke through his thoughts. "I didn't want you to get involved. But now it's too late. They'll come for you too, Samuel. They'll come for both of us." A cold chill ran through Samuel as he looked at her, his heart pounding. What had he gotten himself into? How had everything gone so wrong so quickly? The stranger, David, looked at him one last time. "It's time, Samuel," he said in a voice filled with finality. "You have a choice. You can walk away, or you can join us. But whatever you decide, you're already part of this world now." Samuel stood in the doorway, his mind racing, his future uncertain. What would he choose? Samuel stood in the doorway, his body tense, his heart racing as he processed everything he had just heard. His world, the life he had built, the marriage he had just started, was crumbling before his eyes. The strange and cryptic words from David, the man standing before him, echoed in his mind. He felt as though he had been swept into something much larger, much darker than he could ever have imagined. Rachel was still standing there, her shoulders shaking as she tried to hold herself together. Her eyes were filled with tears, but there was something else in them too: regret, fear, desperation. It was clear that whatever this world was, it was something she had been trying to escape from, something she had failed to outrun. "I never wanted this for us, Samuel," Rachel whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. "I didn't want you to be a part of it. I wanted us to have a normal life, to be happy, to be free. But I can't outrun them anymore." Samuel's mind was a blur of conflicting thoughts. He felt betrayed, confused, and terrified, all at once. The woman he had married, the woman he thought he knew, was standing in front of him, entangled in some kind of dark secret. And now, her past was threatening to consume both of them. "Rachel," Samuel said, his voice hoarse, "what exactly are we talking about here? What is it that you're involved in? What kind of people are these? And why? Why did you marry me if all of this was still haunting you?" Rachel's hands trembled as she wiped her tears away. "I thought I could leave it all behind. I thought I could marry you and have a normal life. But they won't let me go. And now they'll come for us both, whether we want them to or not." David's cold, calculating eyes never left Samuel as he spoke. "You still don't understand, do you? This isn't something Rachel can walk away from. You're in this now, whether you like it or not. These people don't let go. If they want you, they'll take you." The room fell silent for a moment as Samuel's mind tried to catch up with the surreal conversation unfolding around him. Every word seemed to pull him deeper into a nightmare where there were no easy answers, no way out. He could feel the weight of David's gaze, like a suffocating presence, and he couldn't shake the sense that the stranger was waiting for him to make a decision. "I don't know what you want from me," Samuel said, his voice now full of uncertainty. "I didn't sign up for this. I thought this was supposed to be a new beginning." David's lips curled into a smirk. "New beginning?" he repeated, shaking his head. "Samuel, your life was never meant to be simple. It was never meant to be just about faith and love. You've been chosen, just like Rachel. You think your marriage to her was an accident? Think again. They've been watching you both for a long time." Samuel took a step back, his mind reeling. "What do you mean, chosen? Who are these people? What are they planning? What do they want from me?" Rachel looked at him, her face a mix of pain and regret. "Samuel, they believe in something ancient, something beyond anything we can understand. They practice dark rites, rituals that are tied to forces much older than any religion. They've been pulling the strings for centuries, controlling people from the shadows." Samuel felt a cold shiver run down his spine. This was beyond anything he had ever known. His mind kept grasping for logical explanations, but they were slipping away, leaving him with nothing but fear and confusion. David stepped closer, his voice lowering to a sinister whisper. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, Samuel. There's a power here that can bend reality, shape destinies. You've been thrust into the middle of something you can't escape. Rachel has already made her choice. She's bound to us. And now, so are you." Samuel felt his heart race as the words sank in. Was this some kind of cult? Were these people truly capable of the things David was suggesting? And what did it mean that Rachel had been chosen? His mind raced through every possibility. But the one truth he kept coming back to was this: he was trapped. There was no easy way out. "Then what do you want from me?" Samuel asked, his voice now a mix of fear and anger. He was ready to fight, to escape, but he didn't know how. "What are you expecting me to do?" David gave him a hard, assessing look. "You have two choices, Samuel. You can walk away now. You can leave Rachel and this whole mess behind. But understand this: you will never be free of them. They'll hunt you down. They'll come for you, and you'll never be safe." Samuel's heart pounded in his chest. The fear of what might happen to him, to Rachel, was suffocating. But the second option, it felt even more terrifying. What was David offering him? What was the alternative? David's voice was cold, almost bored now. "Or you can join us. Accept your place in this world. Stand by Rachel's side. Together, we can harness the power they have, use it for our own purposes. We can control our own fate." Rachel looked at Samuel with pleading eyes, her face full of desperation. "Please, Samuel, don't make the same mistake I did. Don't try to run from this. We have to face it together." Samuel felt his mind spiraling, torn between the two impossible choices. He looked at Rachel, the woman he loved, who had promised him a life of happiness. He didn't want to believe that she had been living this nightmare all along. But the evidence was clear. Her fear, David's cryptic words, the maggots on the cat, it all pointed to something much darker than he could have ever imagined. His thoughts were a whirlwind of emotion and confusion. He couldn't just walk away. Not when Rachel was in danger. Not when he was already entangled in this web. But the other choice, the one to join them, was something he couldn't fully grasp. Was he willing to sacrifice everything he believed in, everything he had worked for a chance at survival in this twisted world? Rachel, he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. What do you want me to do? What's the right choice? She met his gaze, her eyes full of sorrow and uncertainty. I don't know, Samuel. I don't know if there is a right choice. But I do know one thing. I can't survive this without you. David's voice interrupted them, cold and final. The choice is yours. But remember this. Once you make it, there's no turning back. Samuel felt his heart beat faster as he realized the gravity of the moment. This was his life now, and whatever path he chose would change everything. The silence in the room was suffocating, the weight of the decision pressing down on Samuel's chest like an unbearable burden. Every word David had spoken echoed in his ears, mixing with the memory of Rachel's pleading eyes. The world had shifted beneath his feet, and now it felt like he was standing on the edge of an abyss, uncertain of what lay below. He looked at Rachel, his wife, the woman he had trusted, the woman who had brought him into this world of shadows and secrets. I don't know if I can do this, Samuel said, his voice barely above a whisper, his hands trembling. He had never felt more lost in his entire life. This is beyond anything I've ever known. Rachel reached out to him, her hand shaking as she touched his arm. I know this is hard to understand, Samuel, but I need you to trust me. We can't run anymore. We've been caught in this, and now we have to face it together. If you leave, if you walk away, they'll come for you. They'll come for us both. Her words held a weight that Samuel couldn't ignore. The fear in her voice, the desperation, was real. And the truth of it all was sinking in deeper, the more he thought about it. What kind of life could he have if he ran? Would he ever be free from whatever dark forces had taken hold of Rachel? Could he really just walk away from her, knowing that she was caught in something he couldn't even begin to understand? David, sensing Samuel's hesitation, stepped closer, his voice cutting through the silence. You're running out of time. They'll be here soon, Samuel. You can either join us and take control of your fate, or you can try to escape, but they will find you, and they will make you wish you had never been born. Samuel's heart pounded in his chest. The choice seemed impossible. He had always been a man of faith, believing in right and wrong, good and evil. But this was something different. This was a world that defied all logic, all reason. It felt like a nightmare, but it was real. And now he had to make a decision. I don't know how to trust you, David, Samuel said, his voice shaking with uncertainty. I don't even know who you are. What are you offering me? Power? Protection? And at what cost? What does joining you really mean? David's eyes gleamed with something cold, something ancient. It means survival, Samuel. It means power beyond your wildest imagination. It means being in control of your destiny, instead of being a pawn in someone else's game. It means never being afraid again. Samuel looked at Rachel, her face full of fear and longing. He could see the desperation in her eyes, the weight of the choices she had already made. She had been living in this nightmare for so long, and now it was his turn to face it. Could he live with himself if he turned his back on her now? Could he let her face this darkness alone? I don't want this, Samuel said, his voice filled with anguish. I don't want to be part of this world. I just wanted a simple life, Rachel. I just wanted to be with you. But now I'm being forced into a nightmare. Rachel's face crumpled with sorrow, but she stepped closer to him, her voice soft and pleading. Samuel, I never wanted this either. But we don't have a choice. I'm so sorry I brought you into this, but they'll find us either way. Please, I don't want to lose you. Don't make the same mistake I did. Don't try to escape, because they'll make sure you never can. Samuel's mind was spinning. The idea of joining this dark world, of becoming part of something so twisted and wrong, felt repulsive. But then, the other option, running, didn't feel like a true escape. He couldn't leave Rachel. He couldn't leave her to face this alone. David stood in silence, watching the two of them. He knew Samuel's inner battle all too well. Make your choice, Samuel. But remember, there is no going back. Once you cross this line, Your soul will be bound to us. You will be one of us." The room was suffocating. The tension was unbearable. Samuel's heart raced as he tried to make sense of the chaos around him. Every instinct told him to run, to fight against whatever forces were pulling him into this twisted world. But another part of him, the part that loved Rachel, couldn't bring himself to leave her, couldn't abandon her to this dark fate. Rachel took his hand, her voice barely a whisper. "I can't make this decision for you, Samuel. But whatever you choose, I'll be with you. I'll stand by your side, even if it means giving up everything I've ever known." Tears filled Samuel's eyes as he looked at the woman he loved. He wanted to save her. He wanted to bring her back to the life they had dreamed of. But he also knew that he couldn't do that alone. This was bigger than both of them. And if he was going to face it, he had to face it with her. He looked back at David, his voice steady but filled with resolve. "I don't know if I can trust you. I don't know if I can believe what you're saying. But I'm not walking away. Not from Rachel. Not from the woman I married. I'll stand by her. I'll face whatever comes next." David's eyes darkened, but there was a hint of approval in his gaze. "Wise choice," he said, his voice low. "You've made your decision, Samuel. Now, you are one of us. Welcome to the world you can never escape." Samuel felt a chill run down his spine as the words settled into his soul. This was it. There was no turning back. He had crossed a line, and now there was no way to undo it. David stepped back, gesturing to the door. "Come," he said. "It's time. The ritual awaits. Your place is ready." As Samuel followed David and Rachel out of the house, the sun began to set, casting a blood-red glow across the sky. The world outside felt like it had shifted, like everything had changed in an instant. Samuel wasn't sure what awaited him, but he knew one thing for certain. He was no longer the man he had been just a day ago. The darkness had already begun to consume him, and there was no way to escape it now. The path he had chosen was dark and uncertain, but it was the only path he could take. And with it came the realization that whatever power David and Rachel held, whatever forces they had bound themselves to, would now be a part of him as well. And there was no going back. The night was thick with an eerie stillness as Samuel, Rachel, and David made their way down a narrow, hidden path behind the cottage. The air was cool, but it felt charged with something else, something that made Samuel's skin crawl. He could feel the weight of the decision he had made, the uncertainty of what was to come, pressing down on him. His heart beat fast in his chest, but there was no turning back now. Rachel had chosen this path. David had led them down it. And now, Samuel was caught in the current. They reached a clearing deep in the woods, surrounded by ancient trees that twisted and groaned in the wind. The moon hung low in the sky, casting an almost unnatural glow over the scene. In the center of the clearing, a circle of stones lay on the ground, etched with strange symbols that Samuel couldn't understand. At the far end of the circle, a stone altar stood, dark and foreboding. Rachel's grip tightened on Samuel's hand as they stepped into the circle. The air around them seemed to hum with an unearthly energy, vibrating with something ancient and powerful. Samuel swallowed hard, his mind racing. This wasn't just some ritual, some dark gathering. It was real. This was a part of Rachel's past. Her hidden life, the life she had tried so hard to escape. And now he was part of it. David moved to the altar, his footsteps slow and deliberate. He turned back to look at them, his eyes cold and calculating. This is the place where we bind our souls to the power that governs us. This is where we truly become one with the forces we've chosen to serve. Tonight, Samuel, you will be made like us. Samuel felt a cold sweat break out on the back of his neck. He had no idea what this meant, what was going to happen, but he knew one thing. He had crossed a line. There was no turning back. Not now. Not ever. Rachel squeezed his hand. Her face was pale, her lips trembling. She was scared, but not for herself. She was scared for him. "I'm sorry, Samuel," she whispered. "I never wanted you to be part of this. But now that you've made your choice, we have to go through with it." Samuel nodded slowly, his mind still racing. He wanted to run, to flee from this nightmare. But something deep inside him kept him standing there. He couldn't leave her. He couldn't walk away from Rachel, not after everything they had been through. And in some twisted way, he couldn't deny that the dark energy in the air seemed to pull him in, calling to him, inviting him to join this world he had never believed in. David raised his hands to the sky, his voice rising in an eerie chant that Samuel didn't understand. The words echoed in the clearing, twisting through the trees like a wind of its own. As David spoke, the stones around the circle seemed to glow with an unnatural light, their ancient symbols shimmering with an eerie power. Rachel stepped forward, her voice soft but steady as she joined in the chant. Samuel felt a shiver run down his spine as he looked at her. Her face now expressionless, her eyes empty of the warmth and kindness she had once shown him. She was no longer the woman he had married. She was something else entirely. David's voice grew louder, and the energy in the air became almost unbearable. The ground beneath Samuel's feet seemed to tremble, and he felt the weight of 1,000 unseen eyes on him, watching, waiting. His body tensed, his mind screamed for him to turn and run. But he stayed rooted to the spot. He couldn't leave her. He couldn't leave Rachel. Suddenly, David's chant reached a crescendo, and the air in the clearing seemed to explode with power. The stones around the circle flashed with light, and a gust of wind whipped through the trees, bending them low. Samuel's heart raced, his chest tightening as he felt something dark and ancient press against his very soul. Then, with one final, earth-shattering word, David stopped. The silence that followed was deafening. Samuel's breath caught in his throat as the ground beneath him seemed to shift. The moonlight grew brighter, casting long shadows across the clearing. David turned to face him, his eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "It is done," he said, his voice cold and final. "You are one of us now, Samuel. Your soul is bound to ours." Samuel's legs felt weak, and for a moment, it felt as though the world was spinning around him. He reached out for Rachel, but she stood motionless, her face pale and empty. He tried to speak, to ask her what had just happened, but no words came. The world around him felt distant, unreal, as if he were no longer part of it. David stepped closer, his smile cruel and cold. "You will understand soon enough," he said. "The power is now in you. The bond is complete." Samuel opened his mouth to say something, but the words were lost in the fog that seemed to cloud his mind. His body felt strange, as if it were no longer his own. There was an aching emptiness in his chest, as if someone, had been torn away from him. Rachel stepped forward, her eyes now filled with sorrow. "I'm so sorry, Samuel," she whispered. "But this was the only way. We couldn't run anymore. We couldn't hide from this any longer." Samuel looked at her, his heart aching with betrayal and confusion. He had made his choice, and now there was no going back. He was part of this world, whether he wanted to be or not. The power that David had promised was now inside him, wrapping itself around his very soul. The man he had been was gone, replaced by something darker, something unrecognizable. The night seemed to stretch on forever as Samuel stood there, lost in the aftermath of the ritual. His mind was a haze, the weight of the decision he had made pressing down on him like 1,000 pounds. The dark power that now flowed through him was undeniable, and in that moment, he realized that his life, the life he had once known, was over. He had crossed a line, and there was no going back. He was no longer the man he had been. He was something new, something darker,